Greetings collectors and welcome to another Bossk's Bounty video, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the Star Wars The Vintage Collection Cobb Vanth in his Mandalorian armour. And what you will notice is this figure is on a card back with bubble. Deluxe figures in the Vintage Collection are no longer going to be in those closed boxes. They are now going to be back on these card backs. However, the card back is slightly bigger than your standard card back, but it's not as big as the Mandalorian Maldo Crease, that spider set that was the kind of first deluxe Vintage Collection figure that we got, and they sort of canned that and went with those boxes. But now we're back to these card backs, and I will do a little comparison in a minute so you can see the size difference between the card backs. But ultimately this is what it's going to be like going forward. All deluxe style Vintage Collection figures are now going to be on these card backs with bubbles, which is great news basically. So let's take a look at the card and figure. So you can just see, brilliant image of Cobb Vanth there from the Mandalorian with his Boba Fett armour on there. You can see Cobb Vanth Mandalorian armour in the name pill. Really good image. And there you can see the figure in the bubble with all of his accessories. If you turn it round, you will see that he is numbered within the line, VC343 Cobb Vanth, and a little description about him there. You can see the figure outside of the packaging and the Vintage Collection logo, but not a lot else going on with the card back. And basically what they've done is they've made the card back 1 inch wider to fit more of the film out on there. And if I just bring in a standard card back in, you'll just be able to see the difference there. So essentially they're the same height, it's just these new deluxe ones are 1 inch wider. So let's just put that up against it there so you can just see. There you go. So that's the packaging. Much better than those deluxe boxes in my opinion, and he looks great there in the bubble with all of his accessories. But it's time to get the figure out of the packaging and check him out. Alright then, so here is Cobb Vanth out of the packaging with all of his accessories laid out in front of you so you can see exactly what you get with the figure. And before I get onto the finer details and the articulation and looking at him close up and things like that, I just want to say first off, before I get into all of that though, I am actually really happy with the figure. I think it's a really good looking figure. It looks exactly like I expected it to look like, and I think it's a good representation of how he looked in The Mandalorian. So we're going to get that out of the way first of all, because of course in this video I am going to be, bringing up certain things that I don't like about the figure, but overall it is a really good figure. But there he is, just standing there with his blaster in his holster, ready to draw it. And now we're going to take a close-up look at that head sculpt and all of the finer details of the figure, and then we'll go through all of the things that it can do with all of the accessories and things like that. Okay, so here is a close-up look at the head sculpt, and I think they've done an absolutely fantastic job with the likeness. You've got a side profile there, and just look at the sculpting work of the hair there and the different tones and everything. Absolutely fantastic, really good. It's what we've come to expect these days with the new TVC figures. Face profiles, they just seem to be able to nail these days. And this is no exception. It looks really good. If we move out a little bit, just so we can get some more of the figure in the shot, you can see some of the detail on his armour there. The little scrapes and dinks, the battle damage. Now, of course, this is pretty much the most damage that we ever see Boba Fett's armour. It's gone through a lot at the time that Cobb Vanth has it, before Boba Fett takes it back and, repaints it and what have you. So I think they've captured that quite well. However, on the back, there doesn't seem to be too much of that. But of course, once you have the jetpack in there, then you don't really see that back anyway. But, there's not really any battle damage on the back of him, which was a little bit disappointing. I think they could have at least done some of the shoulders and what have you. But that's just a small gripe. You've got the logo on the shoulder armour there, and some more scrapes and battle damage and things like that, which look really good. The sculpting work overall of his clothes, so his shirt and his trousers, are really good. And also you have that knee pad armour, which is removable. We can take that off. And we will talk about how we can remove some of this armour in a second. But just taking a look at him with the armour on to begin with, you can see he's got his belt there with his holster, with his side blaster in there. Really good detail. I do think that they could have put like a wash over the figure a little bit just to bring out some of the details on his clothes. It does seem to be lacking in paint applications on the actual figure itself, but we've got some paint applications on his gauntlets there, and all of that looks pretty good. You see the sculpting work on his boots there as well. So really, really good figure. And you can see the scarf around his neck as well, which is removable. So why don't we talk about that now? Let's talk about the fact that you can actually remove this armor. So let's just pop the head off for a second. So if you just pop the head off, he has a double barbell in the neck there, but unfortunately the articulation and the range of motion is quite limited because of this piece of plastic here, which is obviously his scarf around his neck. When you have the head on there, it is a little bit limited, but we'll take a look at that in a second. We're going to just take that off and then remove the armor. So this is just going to come off over the head, so you can see like that, and then it does actually pop out the back of the armor there, the little pipes, but unfortunately it doesn't pop out of the gauntlet. So I can understand the gauntlets not being removable, because of course you'd be left with a very skinny arm underneath those, or the gauntlets would just be oversized. But it would have been nice if you could have taken those pipes out of there, because you're kind of just left with this thing there. That is a pretty useless thing. You know, at the end of the day, if you pop that head back on there, he's going to have a really long neck without that scarf. There he is. But, you know, this figure is pretty useless without the armor on it. It's not really a play feature. I think they've just done it so that they can give us that figure in the future, which will be your Marshal Cobb Vanth from the Book of Boba Fett. You know, you can take this knee thing off here, and that's essentially, you know, if you can just imagine that figure without the gauntlets, I can imagine Hasbro, you know, giving us that figure in the future, basically. So that is a bit of a shame that that doesn't come out. It ruins the figure in terms of being able to remove the armor and put it back on as like a play feature, basically. It's not supposed to do that. So there you go. Now this figure comes with a removable head, swappable helmet, rather than a helmet that goes over the head, which I much prefer, because then you get it in scale. Unfortunately, the rangefinder does not move on this particular helmet. And also they usually do come with a barbell in there, but what happens is when you take the head off, the barbell remains in the neck, and then you just put this helmet on the figure like so. And once again, the articulation is slightly limited due to that sort of neck scarf that he has there. So that is one thing to bear in mind. But when he has the helmet on, he looks absolutely fantastic. Again, amazing detail on that helmet in terms of all of the battle damage and scrapes and paint missing and things like that. The back does have a little bit there on the top, but nothing around the back. But still, absolutely fantastic. Love the look of that. Really, really good with the armor. And then when you have the jetpack on him and everything like that, he looks really, really good. So once again, there's that little pipe. It just fits into the back of his shoulder. Now, I did find when I started moving the arm around that if you move it too far, it does try and pull that out. It's popped out on a few occasions when I've been trying to pose the figure, but ultimately you can get the arm pretty much into most positions without it popping out. It just puts a little bit of stress on it, and sometimes that will pop out, but it seems to be in there for the most part. Okay, let's talk about the jetpack very quickly. This is the jetpack that comes with Cobb Vanth, and what's pretty cool is that it has a removable rocket. So that just pops out of there and plugs back in, and some really nice paint applications on that jetpack as well, with some battle damage going on. However, when I compared it against the one that you get with the Return of the Jedi Boba Fett, I did notice something. Here is the Return of the Jedi one in the right hand. Of course, the rocket is different, but if you just look at the thickness of the two jetpacks, you can really see that the Boba Fett one has kind of a lot more going on with it, really. It's a lot sort of thicker, whereas this one seems quite flat. I just thought that was interesting. Of course, it has got a different rocket, but I would expect them to be the same. Not necessarily the rocket, but in terms of the jetpack itself, I would have expected these to be, you know, pretty similar, because of course, at the end of the day, he stole Boba Fett's armor, which included the jetpack. And you can see there are some differences with the paint applications as well. The Boba Fett one has these red tips on there, and even these little pipes here are painted silver, whereas on this one, they aren't. So again, just something to bear in mind. But I did find that interesting that the actual piece isn't the same piece. It's completely different, with the Return of the Jedi one being, you know, just slightly bigger, really. One of his accessories is his longer rifle, and I've got to say I'm really, really pleased to say that this is not gummy at all. It's actually quite brittle. It's really quite solid. The only disappointment with it, I guess, is that there isn't any paint applications on it. So you can just see there it is just your plain, I think that's like almost like a brown colour. But yeah, as I say, really nice sculpt, lacking paint applications, but nice to see that it's sturdy and it's not all gummy and bendy like a lot of the previous blasters that we've been getting on other figures. Same goes for his side blaster, which is very much like a sort of old Western pistol. Once again, that is quite sturdy. It doesn't bend around too much, which is great. So it looks like they have improved the plastic that they're using for the weapons. Really, really good to see. But once again, no paint applications to speak of. It's just all the one colour, which is again like a brown colour. And you will see that it fits absolutely perfect in his holster as well. So just place that in there like so. And that sits in there really, really nicely, and it's not going to come out at all. All right then, so before we compare him against some other figures in terms of the height and put him in some decent poses and things like that, we'll just go over the articulation ever so quickly. As I mentioned, the head or helmet is on a barbell, but unfortunately is fairly limited with the neck scarf. So, you know, not too much range of motion because of that piece there. The shoulders are on ball hinges, of course, they go all the way around, and he has the bendy armour there, so it doesn't really get in the way. Hinges at the elbow, which go well past 90, which is great to see, and we have hinges at the wrists, which swivel. We have a ball joint at the lower torso stroke waist, which moves all around, really, really good. And then we have the new barbell hips, which are just amazing on this figure. We have the cut at the thigh, which swivels, a knee joint, which goes past 90, always good to see, and of course rocker ankles as well. So all the articulation you're going to need on this figure, absolutely perfect. The only issue is, you know, with that neck scarf, it just limits the head ever so slightly, but you know, it's not a deal breaker. And ever so quickly, here he is in his full Mandalorian armour or Boba Fett armour. You've got the jetpack there, he's got the helmet on, he's got the knee pad, he's got the gauntlets, and of course he's got the main armor piece as well, and he just looks absolutely fantastic. I really, really do like it. It's great. Really, really good release for the vintage collection, and of course, you know, it's about time, isn't it? We've been waiting for this figure for a long time, too long in fact, but at least we've got him now. And here he is up against some other figures that we've got. So I've put him up against a clone Boba Fett, a normal Mandalorian, and also I've just thrown Bossk in there. I think Bossk is quite a tall figure as well. And as you can see, he's about the same height, but maybe ever so slightly taller because, you know, these guys have got helmets on essentially. And I think that's about right. He's quite a tall fellow, I believe. The actor that plays Cobb Vanth, he's quite a skinny guy, isn't he? Tall and skinny. But yeah, that's how he matches up against some of the other figures that we have in the line. Forgot to mention that you do get the 2 fire effects for his jetpack, but I've got to be honest, I found these were quite useless really. At the end of the day, mine did not stay in securely, and I didn't really want to bend and break the jetpack where these attach. And as I say, they kind of just kept falling out, so I'm not going to be using these anyway. And here's just a couple of shots of what you can do with the articulation and the poses that you can get this pretty awesome figure in. Alright then guys, so this has been Cobb Vanth in his Mandalorian armour deluxe vintage collection figure. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Always love to know your thoughts. Thank you for watching, and thank you to my Patreon supporters and channel members. Your support means a great deal to me as always, so thank you so much. Thanks for watching everybody, and we shall see you on the next one.